Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So today on the channel, we're learning how to make this tulip skirt with wrap effects and ruffles around it. So if you're interested in learning how I make this beautiful skirt, keep watching and don't forget to subscribe and like. Okay, thank you. So I have my brown paper, my pattern paper, and my fabric. I'll be cutting this out on my paper first before I cut it out on my fabric because I don't want to waste my fabric. Okay, I'll advise you to see cut this out on a paper. It can be white pattern paper, brown pattern paper, whatever paper you have, please. Okay, so I folded this into two. Okay, we'll be cutting out the front part of our skirt first. Okay, so I'm going to measure out my hip point, which is 8 inches. Okay, now I'll be adding ruffles like from the beginning video, there's ruffles attached to it. So I'll be adding ruffles to the edge of the skirt. So I'll be using 21 as my length. That's before adding my ruffles. So I'm going to draw out these lines to make them visible. Okay, so the first line we have is our hip point and the second one is our skirt length. Okay, we're using the top part as our round waist. So the first thing we're going to do is the next thing is to take horizontal measurements. First we have our round waist, working with a round waist of 30 inches. Okay, divided by 4, 7.5 plus 2-inch allowance. Okay, now for the hip circumference we have 40 divided by 4, 10 plus 2-inch sewing allowance. Okay, now to get our knee measurement, we're going to minus 6 from our round hip, that's 34. So I'll have 8.5. Okay, that means the hip is 40 divided by 6, 34, divided by minus 6, 34, then divided by 4. Okay, sorry. So we have 8.5. I also went ahead to add 2.5 inch to that. So I'm just going to connect these lines we've got together to give us our shape for our skirt. Okay, now the front part of our skirt, if you notice, I didn't give any allowance for that because there'll be no dart in front. Okay, our dart will come behind. So the next is to cut this out. Okay, so we have our front. Okay, so I've gone ahead to fold another paper for the back. Okay, so that's for our zip allowance. I took 2-inch for my zip allowance. Okay, so at the other end I'm going to take 1-inch for the dart. Now like I said earlier, there'll be no dart in front but there'll be dart behind. Okay, and our dart is going to terminate at the hip line. Okay, so it won't exceed more than that. So from the waist down to the hip line, that's where our dart is going to be positioned. So I just have to cut this out, same length, everything the same, apart from the 1-inch I added for our dart allowance and the 2 inches I added for zip allowance. Okay, you can decide to use 1-inch for your zip allowance or 1.5-inch, whatever works for you. Okay, so this is what we have. This is what we'll be using to cut for our front and our back piece on our fabric. Okay, so this is the back of it. So we'll bring in our front piece now. Okay, now like I said, it's a tulip skirt with a wrap effect. Okay, I'll also be explaining to us how we can also get a wrap skirt. So from the end of the skirt, I'm going to mark out 4-inch. You can decide to cut it straight. Okay, whatever works for you, like I always say, but I'll be marking out 4-inch at that point. Okay, and then from that end I'll make a connection down to the other part of the clue. Okay, down to the other part of our pattern paper. So you can decide to just start from the edge and then make a curve from there to the other end. Okay, whatever works for you. All right, this just to we're going to cut out a part of this skirt to give us that wrap effect in front. So we're going to have like an opening in front. Okay, so this is our shape, the shape we're going to get. Okay, so another way you can get this, okay, is to, after marking your 4" at the bottom part of the pattern paper, okay, you can decide to come down from the top by say 6 inches or thereabout. Okay, and then just make your connection, come down by 6 inches and then make your connection to that end if you don't want it to be in this shape. Okay, but I'll be working with this shape for this tutorial, so I'll just cut it out straight. Okay, okay, that's why it's advised to use a paper to do this, because the other part of it will not be used, so you don't waste your material. Okay, so we're going to cut this out in our fabric. I'm going to fold my fabric into two. Okay, so I'm cutting at the front. Okay, I'm going to cut out two of this. Okay, because we're going to have two to have that wrap effect. All right, so I'm just going to pin this down so it's not moving too much before I cut it down. Okay, now for this skirt, you can decide to use any fabric of your choice. I'm making use of this beautiful Ankara here. So you can decide to use a crepe material, or whatever works for you, any material of your choice. The main aim is to get the result at the end of the day, to get same results. Okay, and for it to be of fitting when you put this on. Okay, so we're going to cut this out now. Okay, remember I folded this into two, so I'm cutting two of this because we need to have two of this for the front, because we need to have a wrap effect in front. So ensure you're cutting this two. Okay, make sure you have your materials in two folds and cut it out. Okay, so I'm just going to cut it out the same length with my paper. Okay, I already added my allowance to the paper while I was marking this out, so I'm not adding allowance to my fabric. Just cut it out. Okay, so I'll do the same thing for the back. Okay, I already have this part folded down. I'm going to use this to cut out the back part of our skirt. Okay, I'm also cutting out two of this. Okay, like I said, for the back part, we have the space for our zip allowance. We need to have our zip and all that. So I'm going to be cutting two of this down. Okay, so I'll just pin it up like I did for the front, so it will not be moving much. Okay, okay, I hope you can see this clearly. Okay, so I'm just going to, okay, just to mark out the position of my dart there so I can make notches after it. So I'm just going to cut this out. Okay, I'm doing the same thing like I did for the front. I'm not adding any allowance. I've already added that while cutting out my paper, so there'll be no allowance for this. So I'm just going to cut it out exactly as I have it in my paper. Now remember, the back part has the dart allowance and the zip allowance, so I'm cutting that included. Okay. Right, so this is a back piece. Okay, this is also a front piece. Okay, so I'm going to mark out my darts, the position of my darts. My nipple to nipple measurement is 7 divided by 2. I have 3.5 plus half an inch for stitching allowance. Okay, so I'm just going to make a notch there in order to get it, so that while cutting this out, while sewing this down, I'm not going to miss the point. Okay, so I'm also going to make a notch for my zip allowance. Okay, so I went ahead to um turn this out with the lining. You can see I didn't I actually did this. I cut my lining same length with the material. Okay, so this is what I'll do next. This is the front part. Going to just stitch it down. Now if you want this to be a wrap skirt, there's no need stitching down the front part of the material. Okay, but this will not be a wrap skirt, so we're going to stitch that down. We'll do the same thing for the back, putting our darts, okay, for both pieces of the back, and then we're going to join the zip allowance area. Now because the front will be open, there will be no slit behind. Okay, so take notice of that. All right, so this is what the front looks like after I stitched it down. Okay, looking so beautiful already. And I went ahead to iron this out. Okay, so this is our back piece. Okay, like I said, there'll be no slits behind. Okay, I actually stitched down my zip area with a loose stitch, so I'm going to take that out later. The next we are going to do is to take our body measurement. Now remember, our round waist is 30 inch divided by 2, so I'm just going to mark that out. Okay, just I actually prefer measuring out after turning out my fabric. Now remember, I don't there's no allowance added for turning out this, so I feel like some of the inches are lost when you turn this out. When you sew it down, there's always half an inch stitching allowance that is taken for stitching it down. So I always prefer taking my body measurement for this. Okay, so I'm just going to connect this out. Okay, when for you, you can decide to do the same thing, take your body measurement so you get it accurately. Okay, it's preferable like that, except you're working with a fabric that doesn't need a lining, then you can just take out 2 inches. Okay, so I'm going to connect this out. Okay, and then for my skirt length, the knee area, I'll just take the same position as that of my hip for it, because the front part of the fabric is already open. Okay, so there'll be no need taking the measurement for that, will not be necessary. So just going to connect this together, my waist to hip, and then use the same point for my hip down to the skirt length. Okay, I hope you understand what I'm saying. Okay, so this is what we have. Okay, the next thing is to stitch it together, the back and front piece together. So we're going to place it front facing front and then stitch both sides together. All right, so we have it looking like this. Okay, I went ahead to iron it out after stitching it down. So this is what it looks like. Okay, so I've loosened where the position for a band and zip. Okay, my band is 3 inches wide for the people who want to know. Okay, so I'm going to stitch it down. All right, so there I have it, the band and zip all stitched down. The inside is looking neat. So the next thing is to get our ruffle measurements. Okay, like I said, there will be ruffles on this front part of the skirt. So to get this measurement is simply to measure out the opening in front. Okay, starting from this end. So you're going to measure from there down to the other end. Okay, just going to place your tape, measure it out. Okay, and then get the length, so you know the exact length of fabric to cut for this. Okay, so I measured mine down and I got 60 inch. Okay, that's like about a full tape. Okay, I already went ahead to cut out a piece of fabric for this. Okay, I've already cut out a piece of fabric for this. Okay, this is my fabric. The width of my fabric is 10 inch. Okay, now remember I said you measure that out. Okay, because this will be a ruffle, you need to add extra. You can decide to make double of that. Like for mine example is 60, so I can decide to use 120 or make it triple. Okay, so mine is actually triple of it because I want this ruffles to come out very well. Okay, then you can decide to just run gather stitch through it. Okay, but I'll be doing my gathers manually. Okay, so I'm just going to pin this down to give you an example of what I'm going to do. All right, so I'll be doing this manually. Okay, like I said, so I'll just pin this down. Okay, I think for me, because of the length of this, making a manual gathers is actually more easy for me to do. Okay, so this is what I'll do: just fold it up and then sew. Okay, so I'm just going to show you how it will look like. You can decide to do it like mine or decide to run gather stitch and then place it on your skirt. All right, so this is what I'll have. Okay, just fold it up like that and sew. All right, okay, and ensure while you're stitching this down, okay, you open it up to stitch down. Okay, you don't want your skirt to attach to the back, right? So we have it looking like this. Okay, this is our skirt completed. This is the inside of the skirt. Okay, so let me know if you found this tutorial helpful. Okay, and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you'll be notified whenever I post a new video. All right, thank you for watching. See you next time.